The soldiers sitting on the tanks, holding their machine guns, were aiming at us and they were shooting at us. It was really shocking, stressful, terrible when I think of that. We were desperate.
For me, it was a war. For a person of my age, 18, 19, I felt, tanks are here, they will be shooting, there will be, dead people. What is going on?
In spite of the dangers, in the following days and weeks, Prague residents poured into the streets by the thousands.
We all spoke Russian. We were taught Russian ever since the 4th grade in elementary school. So what we did the first days of invasion, we were talking, kids basically were talking to them, to those soldiers, telling them go home, idите домой, Natasha is waiting for you.
They jumped on tanks, they threatened soldiers as much as they could with words. Some people actually went to the point where they stuck rags in the exhaust pipes and in the gas tanks of tanks and lit them and ran. And it's mostly young people you see, of course, people of student age who are willing to do that. The other obvious signs of defiance and disgust that you see in photographs are people walking with Czech flags, some of them bloodstained from the victims of shooting.
Those attempting to resist were powerless to prevent the inevitable. The Prague Spring was over. In the years following the invasion, obedience to the Soviets was mandatory for those who would govern. Ready to be Moscow's loyal ally, Gustav Husak was elevated to the position of General Secretary of the Communist Party.
Husak's government can be seen as a puppet regime. Basically, what the Soviets wanted was stability and so-called normalization. That meant discipline and obedience and no challenge to the rule of the communists.
To meet Soviet expectations, Husak's government would first have to deal with the reform communists who led the Prague Spring.
They became the main targets of the purges that followed the Prague Spring. So you had basically in this early 1970s, not just the party, 500,000 people have been kicked out of the party. But you must understand, it's not just being kicked out of a political party. It means losing your job.
Those who were purged from the party included university professors who had supported the Prague Spring.
In 1968, I participated on the political changes and I was a member of the Communist Party.
Professor Irina Shiklova was a reform communist who taught sociology in Prague.
And because I participated on these strikes which were prepared from the students, in this time I was young, yes, that it was one reason why I was dismissed together with the other 10 people from the faculty.
After firing Shiklova from her post at the university, the authorities sought to humiliate her further by offering her a job cleaning toilets in the same building where she had taught. Shiklova accepted. A mysterious fire in a restroom became the pretext to remove her from the university altogether.
Maybe that you think that this is a joke, but it was not a joke. That in this time when I was the clean woman, somebody gave into this restroom the rest of the cigarette, and this restroom burned out. Yes, and I was accused that I am responsible for it, and that I was dismissed from this job.
So what happens when 500,000 party members are sacked for their reformist past? Well, all sorts of second-rate hacks take over. The guy who is incompetent, that could never handle that job, he steps in. It doesn't matter that he's incompetent because he's loyal to the party.
Pressure to conform to the regime signalled for many citizens a return to the dark days before the Prague Spring.
You couldn't imagine that it could go back where it had been before '68, and it went worse. In a way, it was not so violent as in the 50s, let's say, the persecution and so, but it was more intelligent, it was more totalitarian, more pervasive. And it was bad, really bad.
The regime would make it very clear to people who were doing something they didn't like what the choices were. And what you had to decide was, is it worth it? You know, is it worth losing my job? Is it worth my children not going to university? Is it worth going to jail for? And that was the final thing. It's almost as though they said there's nothing you can do.
As if forced obedience weren't bad enough, citizens were compelled to participate in the ritual parades and celebrations on communist holidays such as May Day.
The May 1st parade was a crucial symbolic ritual for the communist regime and the communist power, and it was of course one of the most hated things because the people were forced to act as if they are supporting the regime.
The regime was basically offering a new social contract. You don't meddle into politics, you leave politics to us. And so long as you retreat into privacy and mind your own business, you'll be okay. This is a deal that is not acceptable to intellectuals. To be deprived of your freedom is basically to be deprived of your identity as an artist.
One artist who felt the deal was unacceptable was the playwright Václav Havel. After the invasion of 1968, Havel was blacklisted. His plays exposing communist propaganda were banned from the theatre.
Havel and other writers who had been engaged during the 1960s in the Prague Spring and the whole liberalization process were virtually banned from publishing, and not only banned from publishing, they couldn't be mentioned.
To bylo po sovětské okupaci, po sovětské invazi, pro obsazení Československa, kdy byl tvrdě potlačována nezávislost naší země, všechny občanské svobody, a byla to opravdu tvrdý totalitní režim.
Unwilling to keep silent, forbidden authors like Havel, who opposed the regime, began publishing in secret.
About 5 years after the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, Havel and the other dissidents began discovering ways of reaching their own public, and they used samizdat. Samizdat is a way of publishing when you're not allowed to publish, and it simply consisted of books made on typewriters with carbon copies that were then bound together.
Then other people who wanted to read them would have to either buy a few copies, or they would have to retype or type another 6 copies. And I think that many of us read those things with huge interest, simply because we felt if it went through this whole process, it was certainly important.
Though the scale and impact of illegal publishing was still relatively small, the consequences for being caught were dire.
When we speak about totalitarian regime, we should stress the word total. It's about total control, meaning whatever you read, whatever you sing, whatever records you have on the shelf at home, any single piece of paper that the regime would dislike found in your home could get you into prison.
Whether involved in the distribution of illegal publications or not, people everywhere felt the presence of Czechoslovakia's secret police, the STB.
Yes, I was really afraid of the STB.
The state security was somehow everywhere. You knew that you could be followed, you knew that somebody could be an informant. It's very hard to describe because it's like a permanent, really permanent atmosphere of fear.
It was quite clear there was a bug in the office. The telephone was tapped, and listened to.
Public fears about how far the regime would go to suppress free speech were realized when members of a popular underground musical group were arrested, simply for playing rock and roll. For many Czechoslovaks, the best way to deal with the atmosphere of permanent fear was to escape into private life. But by the mid-1970s, playwright Václav Havel was formulating a radically different approach.
Já jsem byl jako spisovatel zakázán, byl jsem různě pronásledován a stíhán a měl jsem pořád takový pocit, že jsem jenom objektem dění, že pořád čekám, co oni se mnou provedou a najednou jsem pocítil potřebu být subjektem dění, aby oni přemýšleli, co dělat a jak reagovat, a ne, abych já musel pořád jenom reagovat na to, co dělají oni. A tak jsem napsal takový dlouhý dopis, kde jsem pokusil jsem se rozebrat, analyzovat kriticky tu situaci v naší zemi.
In his letter, Havel did what no one had done before. He accused General Secretary Gustav Husak and the communist regime of destroying Czechoslovak culture. Then, in the most provocative move imaginable, Havel sent the letter directly to Dr. Husak.
It was a very unusual thing to send a letter to Dr. Husak, president and especially the General Secretary of the Communist Party.
Anticipating a backlash and wanting to maximize its impact, Havel also distributed the letter through illegal publishing and leaked it to foreign newspapers.
I think that essay got a very, very wide publication and had quite an impact on people beyond the immediate dissident circle.
And because it was so unusual, so impossible, and so forbidden to do something like that, it had a much bigger impact.
The fact that he's addressing it to the powers that be, Havel establishes himself as the leading political thinker in the country.
Oskar Krejci, who worked in Czechoslovakia's state security apparatus, saw things differently.
Když budeme mluvit o náladách ve vedení strany a i většině stranické veřejnosti, tak ten výraz troublemaker je asi nejpřesnější. Nebyl to opoziční vůdce v tom pravém slova smyslu.
Though interpretations of its impact differed greatly, Havel's audacious essay, dubbed The Open Letter to Dr. Gustav Husak, succeeded in drawing international attention. When articles about the letter to Husak appeared in Western newspapers, security agents were soon knocking on his door. Detained at police headquarters, Havel was interrogated for 2 straight days.
Byl jsem připraven na nejhorší, že mě za ten dopis zavřou. Nestalo se to, jenom zesílili všelijaké persekuce.
Fearing that his incarceration would cause the regime further embarrassment abroad, authorities decided to release Havel. Emboldened by Havel's success, dissidents joined together in 1977 to challenge the Czechoslovak regime on a larger scale. The plan was to expose government hypocrisy by focusing attention on an